Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Visit Pittsburgh President and CEO, Jared Bacher.
Good morning, and thank you so much. So welcome to the State of the Travel Industry 2022 presentation. For the other speakers, I'm going to hide your clicker. There's no better way to kick off the new year than to gather with our community. We are truly fortunate to have amazing partners across Allegheny County and throughout the entire region. We have an excellent agenda planned for you today, and I'm thrilled to share that both Adam Sachs, who's the president of Tourism Economics, and David Bratton, founder and managing director of Destination Analysts, have braved the winter weather and safely made it here to Pittsburgh to share industry and market overviews, as well as to help inform us of what's going on in Allegheny County's travel economy. Also joining us this morning is our local experts, Jim Futrell, Vice President of Market Research and Analysts at Allegheny Conference for Community Development, Edgar Largaespada, who is the Director of Industry Strategy at Partner for Work, and, of course, Paul Hoback, who is the Chief Development Officer at the Allegheny County Airport Authority. I eagerly look forward to hearing from these national and local experts whose insights will undoubtedly assist our community as we work together to navigate all that 2022 has to offer. To our speakers, thank you very much for joining us today and helping to make our community even stronger. Should you have any questions for our speakers, I ask you to please hold them until we have the break or search out the speakers post-program. I'd like to thank the National Aviary for welcoming us into this beautiful space, the Garden Room. This LEED Gold certified space is an excellent addition to our Only in Pittsburgh event venues. In addition, Atria's Specialty Catering, providing the lovely breakfast. Please make sure you take advantage of that so none of this food goes to waste. As well as Huey's, who is a great partner of ours, for their hard work behind the scenes in assisting with today's presentations. Before we turn the program over to our esteemed presenters, I would like to spend a few minutes to provide a brief overview of Visit Pittsburgh's plans for 2022. As the official tourism development organization for Allegheny County, Visit Pittsburgh is dedicated to growing the tourism economy for the region by attracting business events, sports events, and leisure travel consumers to the region. We promote Pittsburgh in key regional, national, and international source markets, and we deliver on our mission along with all of you. We are fortunate to have over 650 active business partners and organizations who help us and work with us along this journey. As many of you know, our organizational structure includes 4 specific verticals. Those verticals include Meet Pittsburgh, Sports Pittsburgh, Leisure and Tourism Marketing, and then, of course, our administrative vertical. Within the organization, our team has begun to grow once again. This rebuilding of talent began last year as we named Andy Ortel our new Chief Sales Officer. Andy brought with him more than 20 years of domestic and international event experience, and his experience includes multiple sides of the events industry. And I'd like to say it all started, but it didn't all start in Pittsburgh. But he certainly was with Pittsburgh as a national sales director from 2000 to 2003. Andy, if you want to raise your hand and say hello, wave a good morning. If you have not had the pleasure of meeting this very tall gentleman, please search him out in the break as well as after the program. He officially closed on his house yesterday here in Pittsburgh, so he is officially a Pittsburgh resident once again. So welcome back, Andy.
Thank you.
Visit Pittsburgh enters 2022 with optimism for sustained growth across all 3 travel verticals following a year which we saw travel and hospitality communities take their first steps towards recovery. Based on industry recovery markers and forecasts, many of which will be shared with you shortly, Visit Pittsburgh has developed plans that ensure every opportunity for growth in 2022 is maximized with initiatives centered on attracting visitors across the tourism verticals of business tourism, sports tourism, and leisure tourism. Due to the ever-evolving global pandemic, the Meet Pittsburgh team has had to evolve and grow its role, becoming even stronger advocates and partners for its event organizers and hospitality community. A key focus for the team in 2022 is to remain a consistent source of timely and relevant information for clients and partners. We eagerly look forward to hosting 23 citywide business events that are scheduled for 2022. These events are critical to the rebuilding of Pittsburgh's tourism economy, and with proper health and safety measures in place, they can bring thousands of visitors into our market, which are obviously going to contribute to an economic boost and support thousands of jobs in our hospitality community. The Sports Pittsburgh team is known for providing local expertise in live event planning, offering access to resources that are unique to the needs of sports event organizers. In 2022, the team looks to return to directly advancing initiatives that drive the economic impact of sports-related events, including booking, hosting, and developing new events that stimulate visitation across the region. Sports events, including youth and collegiate events, are again expected to be a driving force behind the increased visitation to Pittsburgh this next year. Just looking ahead over the next 2 months, we have a lot of great events to look forward to, including the 2022 Steel City Freeze Youth Volleyball Tournament. And of course, over 4 days in March, Pittsburgh will host the NCAA Division I Men's Basketball Tournament first and second rounds. In addition to that, we're super excited about the NCAA Division III Women's Basketball Championship, which will take place over those 4 days as well. These events bring in many of out-of-town visitors and provide an exciting weekend for collegiate competition. Leisure tourism will continue to lead the industry's recovery in 2022, and as such, we will expand our efforts to focus on growth in this area. Our marketing team is working to increase visitation, hotel bookings, and in-market spend through an expanded marketing effort. And hopefully, we will soon welcome a new chief marketing officer to work with our already amazing team and lead those initiatives forward. We also will continue to develop engaging content centered on our Only in Pittsburgh messaging. We know that Pittsburgh is a must-see travel destination thanks to the excellent Only in Pittsburgh attractions and experiences, which help differentiate us from all of our competitors. Our Visit Pittsburgh team remains optimistic that recovery will push ahead in 2022. As we journey into this new year, we look forward to building back Pittsburgh's travel economy, as well as making new memories for our visitors and with all of you. So, Visit Pittsburgh anticipates that recovery throughout Pittsburgh's travel economy should mirror the recovery of the nation's travel industry. Here to share a glance of what 2022 may look like, as well as characteristics of the travel economy, is Adam Sachs, who is a friend, a proud parent of a University of Pittsburgh student, as well as the president of Tourism Economics. Welcome, Adam.
Thanks. It's good to see all of you. I think, given that I only came from Philly and Dave came from the West Coast, I'll just consider myself a local this morning, and it is not only good to be with you just to see you, but also be able to come and see my son last night and be able to be an actual tourist, which is happening more and more since part of my family lives here. I am going to share with you this morning a story. And you may remember from your English class, however far back you have to go for that a good story will have certain elements, right? It'll have a setting, have characters, it'll have conflict, right? And hopefully has resolution as well. These are things that are going to be part of any good story, right? And so what I'm going to do for you is share with you our view of kind of where we've been, where we are, where we're going, within that framework of what I think we can fairly say is an epic saga. Right? We are living through the most severe downturn the travel industry has ever experienced, and are living in the most phenomenal recovery and expecting continued recovery that, again, the industry has ever experienced. So to call this an epic is probably not an exaggeration, at least within the context of the industry that we're a part of. So I've organized this around 4 chapters. Right? The first is storm clouds and resilience. This is our setting. And of course, the storm clouds is we just read the news, right? We know what's going on. This is another difficult time that we're pushing through. But and we're seeing the realities of that, what's going on in the health environment, with how people are feeling, right? And you can see that 34% of respondents to Longwood's latest survey say, well, they're going to postpone their January trip. Some just a couple of months out, some further out. And so this, we might say, is very, very concerning, right? Why are we making so many plans for recovery when you have this happening? Well, let me counterbalance this for you, because I talked about storm clouds, and this is evidence of that. But look what's happened in terms of actual travel through this. What we see is an increasing resilience among travelers, notwithstanding what's going on in the external environment. And in fact, these sentiment surveys and what people say they may be doing isn't really apparent in the actual data. This is flight data. This is people month by month, how many people went through TSA checks compared to the same month in 2019. And you see that during the Delta variant, you saw a little bit of a dip, but I would say that's actually partially seasonal with a shift away from leisure, but just a slight dip there. And then here we are within the first couple of weeks of January, when really, Omicron is just tearing through parts of the country. And what's happened in terms of flights? Dip. Just a small dip. In fact, if you look at month to date for January, it looks actually a whole lot like July. Right? So not that big of a difference. And if you look at hotel data, you see the same thing. This is national data on hotel occupancy rates that have actually been matching at a national level 2019 levels through all of this. So even though, you pull up your news, or you look at the COVID stats, you're like, dang, this is bad. You look at how people are traveling, they don't care. They're still traveling, right? We're like, travelers are done. It would seem from this data, and I'm going to show you more, it's not the whole story, but you can see that obviously there is this growing resilience, even amidst these headwinds and these choppy waters. People are still traveling. Now, Pittsburgh is among urban markets not there yet, right? And Pittsburgh's in very good company in this regard. And if you look at your comp set, the competitors, it's very, very similar. And in fact, I would say as I squint and I look at the data across all of your competitors, which I did in preparation for our time together, Pittsburgh is either matching or overperforming its competitors as I look at them month by month. But you can see, of course, you've made up a lot of ground from 2020 and narrowing that gap to the benchmark year of 2019 moving forward. But what we haven't seen is any sort of obvious cause and effect based on what's happening in the health environment and what's happening in travel. So the main observation here from this first chapter is this growing resilience among travelers, even amidst choppy waters and headwinds. The second chapter, I want to talk to you about a force. It's neither good nor evil, it's just the force. It's the economy, right? And is it going to be a force for good? Is it going to prevail in helping to support this recovery or not? Well, I'll just jump to it. We think it is, actually. And even though there are concerns that we have about the economy, overall, the foundations and the underpinnings of the economy are very, very strong. Let me share with you a couple of highlights of that. First, of course, is what's happened in the jobs recovery. The U.S. economy lost 22 million jobs in the spring of last year, or 2020 now. Right? We have recovered all but 3.6 million of those jobs. The unemployment rate is now 3.9%, right? And of course, there are other measures of that. But let's just pause and reflect on what a dramatic recovery on the jobs market we have experienced. Add to that that consumers and households have amassed an incredible amount of wealth over the last couple of years. North of $130 trillion added to household balance sheets. At the same time, if you look on the right-hand side, you'll see that debt as a share of income has fallen from about 18% to now 14%. Households have also deleveraged. So if you think about households' balance sheets, they're stronger than they've ever been on the asset side, and they're stronger than they've ever been on the liability side in terms of deleveraging as well. This is a war chest for travel, right? And if you look at our forecast, my parent company, Oxford Economics, forecast for consumer spending, you're looking at a record consumer spending surge of 8% last year, and another above-trend growth in consumer spending next year, really fueled by this consumer savings. And what's even more important as we think about the outlook for travel is this, what we call this rotation of how people are spending their money away from goods and towards services. Part of this is pent-up demand, that services were unavailable in certain categories when parts of the country have been locked down or people have been cautious. So we're seeing a shift from goods, which were those yellow and orange lines, to services, which are now in the process of fully recovering. So as those monies that have been saved are being put to work, they are being more and more oriented toward services. You note that I'm just generally referring to my charts because I can't see them. Right? So I'm letting you fill in the gaps, which is fine. It's actually a great mental exercise for me to see if I know my material. All right. Now, consumer confidence is a really interesting animal right now. We could say it's a strange bird, given where we are. Thank you. I'll be here all morning. All right. Why is that? Well, because if you look at the consumer confidence survey, right, by the Conference Board, say confidence is pretty good. If you look at the consumer sentiment survey from the University of Michigan, say, things are bad. Which are they? Are we feeling good or are we feeling bad? Well, maybe we're feeling both. But here's the question, which one matters? And I would tell you, there are statistical reasons for this, but there are also real-life reasons for this. That confidence, the line that is still going, that is relatively stable and high, is the one that matters. And the reason that it's the one that matters is because what we really care about is not how people feel, but how they behave. Listen, I may feel like quitting my job any given moment. For the record, I don't. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to do that, right? And so here's the point. Confidence is winning the day right now. Because if you look at retail sales as one metric, which is a monthly indicator, we're up some 20% over 2019 levels. So people may feel kind of bad, but they are still spending, right? And so that same sort of dichotomy between feelings and behavior that we saw in travel, we're also seeing in general consumer spending as well. So what does all this mean, particularly in the face of Omicron? Well, fourth quarter is going to show up really hot for the U.S. economy. Right, wait for it. But first quarter of 2022 is going to see definitely a slowdown. There's no doubt about it. But overall for the year, we're still looking at economic growth next year of some 4%, which is above trend for the U.S. economy. That's real GDP growth of 4% this year. What's interesting about this cycle is that it looks nothing like what we experienced during the Great Financial Crisis, where 3 years on is when we finally got back up to sea level on level of output. Here we are, just 2 years, actually within about a year and a half, we got back up to where we were in terms of economic output. So severe downturn, much quicker recovery. What we're seeing in the economy, we're seeing in travel. And so the main point of this section is that the underpinnings of the economy remain very, very strong and will be a force for recovery moving forward. So let's ask the question, what could possibly go wrong, or put within our narrative framework, who's the enemy of the story? Who is our antagonist? Well, many come to mind, right? And I'm gonna hit these really briefly in the interest of time, but there are really three antagonists in the story, right? One, of course, is extended effects of COVID-19. The second would be runaway inflation. And the third would be labor force constraints that many of you are likely dealing with. Let me share with you just a couple of highlights on how we're seeing this. One on inflation. Inflation is going to remain sticky through the first half of this year. However, we are of the conviction that it will taper down in terms of the rate of growth as we move into the second half of the year. The reason for that is the things that are driving inflation right now are by their very nature transitory. Now there's a risk that this flows through a wage increase feedback into inflation, but we haven't seen that historically really happen. And so we think the most likely outcome here is that as supply chain issues begin to resolve and as demand does begin to taper as we move through the year and out of kind of the big recovery push that we were in, that inflation will taper down. Add to that the Federal Reserve is likely to increase interest rates 3 times this year. Add to that they are tapering down on bond purchases, all of these tapping the brakes in the U.S. economy. And we think all of that has its effect as we move through the year and inflation begins to come down. The other reason that we think the labor force issue, while it is probably the one that is going to be with us the longest, does have an off-ramp is because the labor force participation rate is rising. If you look at the reasons that people have left the labor force, issues with concern about COVID-19, child care issues, even people taking early retirement, there are other reasons as well, but all of them are beginning to resolve themselves. We're seeing the labor force participation rate already come up. Add to that immigration is going to become more of a, particularly for our industry, a release valve. Right? I mentioned interest rates. Again, looking at 3 interest rates hikes this year, and so the main point is I look at these risks, right? These enemies of our recovery. All of them are formidable, right? But we think all of them do begin to resolve as we move through this year, and so some of this is just let's just push through this, right, and hunker down. Finally, what are the travel forecast milestones? How does this story end, right? Well, let me do my best to give you our view of how this story goes from here. Another snapshot from Longwoods International. 9 in 10 travelers say they have traveler plans over the next 6 months. So even though you might take the first chart I showed you and say, maybe the next month is a little scary, if you look at the next 6 months, you see almost no movement off that block, regardless of what's happening in the external environment. And our forecast for Visit Pittsburgh that we just completed does show an acceleration in the recovery as we move through the summer. So that gap between where we are and 2019 will begin to narrow, and this is what I'm showing you here, all relative to 2019, will begin to narrow as we move into the summer, and then continue by the end of this year. At least in the upside scenario, you have the possibility of getting back to 2019 occupancy by the end of this year. Now, that's not the most likely. I think our baseline scenario has you a little bit beneath that. But you can see, at least the way that we're modeling this out, that occupancy rates in Pittsburgh get close to where they were, right, by the end of this year, early next year, with a lot of ground being made up through the summer of this year. One other benchmark for you to tell you about the strength of the leisure market. MMGY has been running this sentiment survey for, I think close to 20 years now. And excitement about travel has never been higher in their survey. Even though it's come down a bit in the latest round, the fourth quarter of last year, it's still higher than it's ever been. You know, when I think about the enduring legacy of this crisis, there are a number of them. But one of them, I think, is an appreciation for travel that people never had before, right? And an enthusiasm for travel, and it's evident in this survey. On a spending basis nationally, just to give you a sense of business travel and meetings, we think that by the end of the year, we get to about 3/4 of where we were on business travel, and full recovery takes up, till 2024, we get to about full recovery on business travel. Right? It's going to take longer, right? And so it's going to require some patience on the meetings business to fully recover. But let me just share with you the reality that as I'm making predictions, I know they don't always age well. I'm in the business of doing this, And so, I know people in glass houses shouldn't throw stones, but let's do this anyway. Here's some predictions that didn't age well. Here's one. We don't like their sound. Guitar music's on the way out. It was the Beatles, right? And it was made by Decca Recording Company, who is no longer in business. Fascinating. Another one, he's a very good offensive player, but he won't turn this franchise around. Talking about Jordan. Yes, it was Jordan. And the best part about that, it was made by the guy who drafted him. All right, so a guy trying to set expectations not too high. But yes, actually, he was a very good offensive player and did actually turn the franchise around. And lastly, there's no chance that this is going to get any significant market share. I'll just keep moving. It was the iPhone made by Steve Ballmer. Listen, this thing is not going to take. Well, it did, obviously, right? And so why am I sharing with you these bad predictions? Because bad predictions are still getting made, and one much more recent was that more than 50% of this will disappear in a post-coronavirus world made by none other than Bill Gates, talking about nothing else but business travel, right? And I'm here to tell you that this prediction will age and has already aged about as well as the prediction about Michael Jordan being just a moderately good offensive player. And the reason that I say that is because the evidence is that we've already broken through that with group room demand from STR. This is basically meetings, conventions, and trade shows already being at 60%, right? And we're talking about meetings that are getting canceled and people are not showing up, and we're still already at 60%, right? And if you look at MMGY's latest survey of intentions to travel for business, even among generations, you see an incredible strength, even in the face of Omicron, people expecting to travel for business in the coming months. I think it's fascinating. The only generation to lose ground in the fourth quarter was millennials. I will not pontificate about why that is. I just want to say Gen X is holding strong. All right, let me end my time with you here and share with you a couple final thoughts. The industry that you represent, that you're a part of, has been a growth engine for the Pittsburgh economy. I know we're going to hear more about labor markets, but let me just share with you a big picture here. Over the decade before COVID-19, leisure and hospitality employment well outpaced overall employment growth in Pittsburgh. Right? It was a driver of the economy, a driver of job growth by quite a margin. But what's happened and where we are right now is that of all the jobs lost in Pittsburgh, a greater share of them is within leisure and hospitality than any other sector in the economy. And it leads to the undeniable conclusion that the only way that the Pittsburgh economy gets fully whole and recovered is through a full recovery in travel and the visitor economy. So what you do is absolutely vitally important, because you are the lever, you are the engine for full recovery for the Pittsburgh economy. We don't get full employment recovery, full economic recovery in Pittsburgh without a full recovery in the travel industry. So what you do in marketing and sales and promotion and welcoming is absolutely essential, not just to your industry, but to the entire economy of Pittsburgh. And I will add that people are going to DMO websites more than they ever have before. In fact, starting in the spring of last year, organic searches and visits to DMO websites like Visit Pittsburgh were higher than they have ever been, higher than 2019, and continue to be. And so people are more and more being inspired by planning based on getting information from the content that Visit Pittsburgh and other DMOs are producing. And so what you do is indeed the lever to recovery. So let me close with this. Key points. Domestic leisure continues to win the day. You're going to see that as you move into the summer, especially. Business travel, think about a 2-year recovery plan there. And destination marketing is absolutely vital to recovery. And it leaves just one question unanswered. Who's the hero of our story? And we might say it's the visitor, the traveler, and they've been undeterred and seem to be resilient. But I don't think so. The hero of the story is the travel industry. It is you. The last 2 years, you have persevered in a way that you've never had to before. You have innovated, you have collaborated, you have pivoted, I know many of you have not only worked extra hours, some of you have taken pay cuts to maintain staff. You have defined perseverance, and you haven't done it just for yourselves, you've done it for your staff, your teams, your organizations, your communities, your city. And so in this story, when all is said and done, and I know this story is not fully written yet, but we're in the end game now. And I like where it's headed, and I salute all of you as the heroes of this story. Thanks for having me again.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Jim Futrell, Vice President, Market Research and Analysis for the Allegheny Conference on Community Development.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's great to be here. I was thinking it's about the first time that I've stood in front of a room full of people and talked about Pittsburgh in over 2 years. So it's nice to see a group of people that aren't little squares on a computer screen. But I'm going to give an overview of what we see going on in the Pittsburgh region, from the economy perspective, from demographics, and then from some tracking we do in terms of business announcements, how we've seen things changing and evolving over the years. So, where we've been, where we are. This is a chart I use to look at year-over-year employment by month. Comparing Pittsburgh to the 15 benchmark regions we compare our performance against in the United States. And I think it's just interesting to compare on the left what we saw during the last economic downturn, the Great Recession, was a much more gradual decrease. We actually didn't do as bad as the rest of the country at the time because that was when the Marcellus land rush was going on. And then compare it to the really sudden and dramatic drop in employment that we experienced in February to April of 2020, and then the summer rebound, and then when we started doing a year-to-year comparison, and again, the big increase in recovery. What this has done is brought down our unemployment rate. And here in the 10-county region that we track, we're at 4.8% right now in November, which was only slightly above the U.S., below the state. I think this is a really great economic indicator that people who want and need to work are getting employment. What we're seeing, though, is that we've seen a lot of people drop out of the labor force over the past year. I think a lot of that, we tend to have an older population here. Retirements are at record highs, so I think we're seeing a lot of people who are saying, my 401k has gone gangbusters the last few years, I don't need to do this anymore. And just looking at it in terms of raw numbers, what we saw from February to April of 2020, the region lost 207,000 jobs. To put that in perspective, when the steel industry collapsed, it took 2 years for the region to shed 100,000 jobs, and we all remember how traumatic that was. Or I guess many of us do. But then looking at the rebound, we have recovered 169,000 of those jobs. And just highlighting a couple industries where you saw the most variability was areas like construction, retail trade, professional and business services, education services, healthcare, and leisure and hospitality. Looking at it in terms of industries that, the percent of employment that they have recovered compared to 2 years ago, so November 21 to November 19, you can see that most industries are within roughly about 5% of where they were. A couple of industries such as construction have really done well. Utilities are all at above that level. And there's 5 industries here in the region that are continuing to struggle, and really for differing reasons. What you see in like mining and logging, long-term market conditions, decline in coal industry employment, shift in natural gas going more from the extraction to the distribution side of it. You see manufacturing and wholesale, which have both been involved in long-term declines in employment, just as those industries have evolved. And then finally, leisure and hospitality and other services. Leisure and hospitality being at roughly 85% of where it was 2 years ago. Those two are the industries that were most disproportionately impacted by the COVID downturn. Other services are things like personal services, dry cleaning, repair services, hair salons, that also, like leisure and hospitality, really had a harder time recovering. Looking at the shortfall by industry, where the region is roughly down 68,000 jobs from where it was in November of 2019. Quarter of those jobs are in leisure and hospitality. You can see compared to the U.S., roughly a third of the jobs that are down are in that sector. I think it's interesting to see that like 29% of the job loss nationally is in government. A lot of that is public education and the challenges they've been having. But also here in the region, wholesale, healthcare, professional business services, manufacturing, all account to about 8 to 9% of the decrease. So, Adam talked a little bit about leisure and hospitality employment. I wanted to dive into it a little bit. Again, it's a very important industry here in the region. We all depend on it for our livelihoods. It is also the fourth largest industry by employment in the Pittsburgh metropolitan area. So, as Adam said, kind of how this industry recovers is going to drive how close the region gets to pre-pandemic employment. So, looking at the industry as a whole, traditionally, you saw that employment had been traditionally running at about 110, 120,000 a year. Again, it's a very seasonal industry, so you saw the peaks in the summer. And again, the seasonal trends have returned, and you can see the gap, the darker blue line. That's where we've been tracking monthly in 2021. The darker blue line is getting closer to historical trends. So we're starting to see that gap close. It's also going back to its traditional seasonal trends too. Arts, entertainment, and recreation, the people who work in this building, the people who work at the zoo, the art galleries, a lot of the great destinations that we have here in the region. What I've really found encouraging is that sector of leisure and hospitality has returned to traditional historic employment levels, peaking out at about 26,000 in the summer. So that has rebounded. It's back at its traditional seasonal trends. So that's a very encouraging development. Conversely, really the sector that's really continuing to struggle is accommodations. It had fallen to roughly about 40% of pre-pandemic employment at some points in the during this downturn, and it's really not rebounded to the level you saw other parts of this industry. You can see a little bit a seasonal downturn, but its trend line is closer to where it was in 2020 than where it was in 2020 previous years. I think Adam might agree that probably a lot of the recovery is going to be dependent on business travel. Because a lot of, I think what's driving this is the banquet business at a lot of the big downtown hotels. It still has a long way to go to rebound. Still even the Marriott downtown is still closed. So, you're not back to full employment levels. And then finally, the largest sector, which is, food services and drinking places, accounts for roughly 2/3 to 3/4 of the sector employment. It has continued a slow rebound, but again, still tracking closer to 2020 levels than historic levels. I think this is one of the things hurting, really challenging this particular sector is the labor shortages. Now, just kind of a quick scorecard where we are right now compared to 2 years ago. The labor force in the region is at 95% of where it was, but again, we're seeing that it's at the lowest level it's been in roughly 30 years. We're seeing employment growth, we're seeing unemployed people going, back to work, but, the people in the labor force has been shrinking. Unemployment rate is still higher. Now, this is the metropolitan area unemployment rate. I'm kind of going back and forth with labor and industry right now about the disparity between the regional unemployment rate for the 10-county region and the 7-county metro, because Allegheny County is at 4.8%, so it doesn't make sense that the 7-county metro is a full percentage point higher. But anyway, unemployment, we've been right at about 94% of 2019 levels for about 6 months now. We're really struggling to close that gap any further. Leisure and hospitality employment, roughly 85%. Establishments, payroll establishments, you've actually seen a slight increase over the last 2 years, which I think comes as a surprise. But yeah, this is businesses, the BLS tracks that have payroll employees. So some of the smaller businesses that have really been impacted might not be included in that count. And then you see leisure and hospitality at about 98% of where it was. Airport traffic, 83.9% in November. I think that is close to national trends, so that's very encouraging, and I think something that a lot of us were surprised to see how rapidly those numbers have recovered. Downtown visitors, 81% of 2019 levels in November. Hotel occupancy in the region, about 81% of where it used to be, and then the RevPAR at about 88%. So I think, if we were standing here a year ago, we would not have expected to see these numbers. So I think, that's, very encouraging, and hopefully we'll be, seeing that gap continue to narrow through 2022. Now, wanted to also talk about our demographics here, because I think earlier this, in late 2021, we were all very pleasantly surprised when the census results came out, and it showed for the first time since 1960, the 10-county region did not lose population. Very encouraging trend. It was very surprising, given a lot of the other things we had been seeing going on. A lot of that was driven by Allegheny County being able to grow its population by 2%. Butler County, Washington County also experienced growth. But I think we need to keep cognizant about more of the outlying counties still are dealing with that chronic population loss. What we did see is a region that is getting more diverse. The white population here in the region actually fell by 5.5%, which was twice the rate of the United States as a whole. But we saw very strong growth in the Asian population, Hispanic and Latino population, 2 or more races, other race. But despite this growth, we still have an issue with diversity here in the region. In the 10-county region, roughly 12% of the population is non-white. The Allegheny County fits more closely to state patterns, but the challenge will be that going forward, the white population group is not going to be growing, and is in fact going to be shrinking. So the more diverse population, that is a way to get your population growing. Now, when we look at what's driving the change here in the region, there's kind of 3 broad components. You have international migration, who's coming in from outside the country; domestic migration, who's leaving, leaving the region from elsewhere in the United States; and also the natural population change, the difference between births and deaths. And what we saw early in the decade, around 2010, we started seeing more people move into the region than move out. A lot of people were coming here because our economy was comparatively more healthy than the rest of the country. There was a lot of opportunity with shale gas. And I think that helped carry us through the decade to the 2020 census. But you did see it start to reverse. I think some of those losses you now see in 15, 16, 17, based on what we saw with the census, are probably overstated by the Census Bureau. But I think the 2 Areas of concern are the decreasing international migration. You've seen early in the decade very solid growth in that, but it has trailed off as it has nationally. And then also the continuing gap in births versus deaths. Back early in the last decade, we were very encouraged by the positive migration. We thought to ourselves, we have this a disproportionately older population. Hopefully, as that population shrinks, births will catch up with deaths. That didn't happen. We have seen births continue to decrease in the region while deaths have maintained its historic level, and even in 2020, it kept with historic patterns. But this is now not specifically a Pittsburgh issue. This is a national issue and a growing national issue. In 2015, 13 metropolitan areas in the country had more deaths than births. And it was primarily, not in addition to Pittsburgh, a lot of retirement areas down in Florida, Arizona, and some places like Scranton and Youngstown, the smaller industrial cities. But now in 2020, that number of metropolitan areas has doubled. There were 27. Cleveland's on the list now. Tampa's on the list. So this will probably only continue to increase in the future. In fact, 2021 was the slowest population growth year in the history of the United States, going back to 1790. So, aging population, declining birth rates, that's going to be a broad challenge for the country as a whole over the next 10 years. But to leave you on a slight encouraging note, as the population nationwide is aging, we do not see that to the same extent here in the region. Between 2010 to 2020, the median age in the region as a whole increased by a year, but nationwide it was 1.4 years. So we're seeing the region getting younger. I think we've seen that here, particularly in the city, the growth in the younger populations, and that helped drive a decrease in the median age in Allegheny County. So just to leave you with that, we are seeing the population here becoming more diverse, becoming younger. Those are two very encouraging trends that we really didn't expect to see 5-10 years ago. But we have these nationwide trends now that are going to present some headwinds going forward. So to take a little look ahead, one of the things that we do at the Allegheny Conference is an annual business investment scorecard. We track business investment announcements here in the region, and in the 15 or so years we've done this, we found it to be a very effective leading economic indicator of what's going on in the region. This goes back to the total announcements that we've had since the beginning. And we look at two different types of announcements, what's called an investment announcement, which is a company saying we are going to hire 100 people, and development announcements, which is a developer saying we're going to put a business park out by the airport, build 2 million square foot distribution centers, but we don't have a tenant yet. So I don't think it comes of any surprise. In 2020, the number of investment announcements dropped pretty significantly, but I think it's a very encouraging longer-term sign to see that those announcements of we're going to be investing in the infrastructure and real estate of this region almost doubled over the previous year. Looking at it by action too, we look at, is this an existing company expanding here in the region? Is it a new company coming to the region? Or is it a startup? So you saw that, again, big drop-offs in both expansion and retention and investment. Startups did increase slightly. Again, one of the, I think those encouraging signs where you're seeing some confidence, and I think when I'll get into it later, some of these technologies that we have spent so many years developing really taking hold and becoming commercialized. We focus on 5 key sectors here, and I think in the 15 years we've been doing it, it's been interesting to see how it has reflected the broader economy. What we saw back 9, 10, 11, we saw energy emerge as the leading sector in terms of investment announcements. What we have seen in the last few years is a big increase in IT and robotics. And last year, the only sector that showed an increase was healthcare and life sciences. So we've seen, driving, you drive through Lawrenceville in the Strip District, you see the robotics and technology companies growing. You've seen a lot of announcements in terms of, technology out of the UPMC finally getting commercialized and resulting in new companies. And what you've seen, the red line, that big growth in robotics from 16 to 17. Not surprisingly, 15 was when Uber opened its center here, which is now part of Aurora. And that really got that whole autonomy sector going and really driving a lot of the robotics announcements. What I thought was great in 2020, we saw the number of life sciences announcements triple in the region. We went from roughly 6 in 2019 to 18. So again, that was a sector that we've, Pitt spends roughly $700 million a year in life sciences R&D, and so it looks like it's finally paying off. Another thing, which I don't think comes of any surprise to people, is the huge increase in announcements of distribution centers. E-commerce is on fire. Traditionally, we had seen the distribution centers go to Columbus or Harrisburg, more traditional distribution hubs, but we're really seeing that sector of the industry really take off now, and that number is tripled, and I think we've already hit that number. We have the data through the first 3 quarters of 2021, and I'll show you that. This is just looking at the announcements by month. You can see in 2020 that huge drop-off in spring, but the announcements started rebounding pretty quickly and have kind of kept up with those numbers through 2021. And then finally, I think it's interesting to see how it has changed in, let's get that, there we go, has changed this year. I looked at the annual average from 15 to 19 by industry and type of facility being announced, and then what happened in 2020 and what's going on this year. And what's interesting, I think this really shows this evolution into more of a remote hybrid work environment, and that manufacturing, big increase in the number of announcements, but financial and business services, an industry that you can do more in a remote or hybrid environment, big decrease. And then looking at the type of announcement, you see this big drop in branch offices. Does a company really need to rent office space here to open a branch office when they can go, put someone in a shared office facility or just have them work remotely? Back office facilities, also another remote-friendly type of operation. And also headquarters facilities. All have decreased in 2021 versus previous years. On the other hand, you can see the big increase in distribution centers, plants, R&D facilities. Again, those types of facilities that you cannot really transfer to a remote environment. So just kind of in conclusion, we are continuing to lag the nation and our benchmark regions in employment growth. The slow population growth here is having an impact. Roughly 2/3 of a region's economy is supported by the people in that region. So if you're not growing population, you're not organically growing demand. The shortfall is largely driven by 5 industries, leisure and hospitality and other services, which had the greatest pandemic impact. Manufacturing and wholesale, which have had longer-term trends that predate the pandemic by several years. Mining and logging, which is broader market forces. And I think the full recovery in leisure and hospitality is contingent on business travel. And while the region's population growth is stabilized, we're going to be challenged by the broader national trends that we're now seeing. Record low population growth, declining immigration. Our business growth announcements, I think, show a lot of confidence in the future economy, especially those high level of development announcements, new buildings, industrial parks, infrastructure. The emerging industries are taking hold, robotics and life sciences. Announcements reflect the impact of remote work, with manufacturing and distribution centers leading the charge. So, thanks everyone. It's great to be back, and turn it over to our next speaker.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Edgar Largaespada, Director of Industry Strategy for Partner for Work.
Good morning, everyone. It's good to be here. Just gonna get situated here. And I just wanted to say that I am so thankful to follow Adam and Jim because I think they've given us a little bit of good news, encouragement, and some of the numbers that they walked us through. So I'm going to build on that. And I'm here not to dive into labor market information or the economics, but more to present ourselves as a partner to the industry. We, as I was listening to our presenters, I kept thinking of really what Partner for Work here, what we want to do is help answer the question of how do we capitalize on that resiliency, on that bit of good news that we're seeing, that encouragement. So how do we take advantage of that? And so we want to be that partner and in that additional tool in your toolbox that can help you do that. So I will go a little bit into who we are, but I don't want to bore you with the details of what Partner for Work is as an entity. Instead, I want to spend more of my time with you just talking a little bit about the different things that we are able to do. And so that way you can start thinking, how can we collaborate and work together? So with that said, let's get started. So who is Partner for Work? So you might have heard of Three Rivers Workforce Investment Board a few years back, now Partner for Work. We is the local workforce board, and workforce boards exist all throughout the country. Anywhere you go, there will be a workforce board. And workforce boards are essentially the federally recognized entity to serve as stewards of public money, taxpayer money, that our mission is to manage and invest that money into workforce development for our local area. So there are many ways we do that, from youth programs to adult programs to programs designed specifically for employers across industries. So essentially, that's what we do. Our local area is City of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County, and I want to emphasize that just because even though that is our local area and some of your businesses might, nothing fits neatly into county boundaries. So even if your business is in two different counties or across county lines, do not be discouraged. We will still be able to help you and also help you connect with the other workforce board that might be closer to where your business is if it's outside of Allegheny County. So that's essentially who we are, and so what can we do? There's several ways in which we can work with you. I like to summarize it in 3 words. It's recruit, train, and retain. So recruitment of talent. How many of you, if I can get a show of hands, how many of you have heard of Careerlink? Wow, more than I expected. That's good. So Careerlink, we manage the Careerlink offices in our area, and there's 2, one downtown and one in Forest Hills. Careerlink serves as that public-facing brick-and-mortar location where job seekers can go to seek services to help them find meaningful employment, where employees can call in and post their jobs. There are host of other free services, including hiring events, info sessions, just different mechanisms to get the word out about the opportunities there are within your company, within your business. So that is essentially off-the-shelf services. If you want to think about it, off-the-shelf, anybody can go in and post jobs, participating in hiring events, set up your own hiring event, your own recruitment event, have an info session, work with the business services team to try to target specific populations that you're looking to hire. All those things are available to all of you through Careerlink. And that is part of the recruitment strategies that we can offer. Beyond that, this is where we, as Partner for Work, we have other services that we manage outside of Careerlink. And that is that we contract out a lot of workforce services to community-based organizations. So I'm talking about organizations like Aviary, like Phase 4, that exist in neighborhoods across the county, across the city. And so they work more locally, and they're able to target more local populations. And in this case, I'm talking about youth programs. So if you're thinking about, for example, depending on the peak season for your business, if you are looking for to hire part-time workers or have just additional help, these are ways that you can reach that population through these organizations, and we can help you have a better understand what they can offer and help you connect with them so that you can work together and find the workers, the employees that you are looking for. Another way that we can help you is cultivating future talent, and that's when I talk about the training piece. Training both for new hires. We offer what we call on-the-job training dollars. They're also they can help you. You take someone in that maybe needs a little more training. You can do that, and we can help you subsidize some of those wages. So that what that does allow is frees up some of your resources to maybe pair them up with someone that can mentor them for a few months. Maybe they can spend a little more time working or shadowing someone while they learn the ropes of the business. So this allows to mitigate some of the risk that you're taking by, hiring someone that maybe is not as experienced as you typically would like, but that gives you the flexibility to just, work outside those edges and be able to be able to overcome some of the challenges that we're facing in this labor market. So those are resources available to you, again, through Careerlink, where they're available through us. You can, contact me, and my team will be able to support you as you do that. Also, training. We have, training outside of the on-the-job training dollars. We have additional training dollars that we are putting into folks that are looking to get some short-term training and then go into employment. So if you're talking to candidates, or you have someone in your ranks already that they want to upskill, this is a good opportunity for them to come to us, or for you to come to us and say, I have a group of folks that I think could benefit from additional training. We can think about who is out there in the community offering that type of training and use these dollars to help them pay for that training, and then knowing that there's a job at the end of that training. That really takes a lot of the guessing game for job seekers. Many job seekers that we work with are hesitant to do that. They feel the pressure of needing employment now, and the risk of, do I take a chance on going to short-term training and maybe get a job? But when employers come to the table, when they say, we're here to collaborate, we're here to talk with you, and there is a real job waiting for you after this training. This is what you need to do, though. Let's have a very frank conversation. That takes a lot of the guessing game out for these job seekers. I think it makes them feel a little more secure in their opportunities as they train, as they come back to the labor market. Another piece is like I said, retain. And there, what I mean by strengthening your team is you have folks that maybe have been with you throughout this tough 2 years and keeps on going. They've stuck it with you. They've been there through thick and thin. And so these are folks that maybe you want to think about elevating in their responsibilities, their role within your company. This is an opportunity to do that, and we can help you do that. I think this is a great thing. We're able to partner with our employers in industries to help grow their teams, to help them nurture their staff and provide professional opportunities for professional development. So that's something that also that we are, very, very excited to be able to do with all of you. Connecting with other organizations. This is, we like to think of ourselves as, being that, that connective tissue of sorts. There are so many great organizations throughout the city, throughout the county, are working with job seekers that also have great training programs. And as employers, many times, you are really busy running your business. And through these times, that cannot be overstated. So we want to be there for you to help you find some other potential partners in that community that can help you. So that's what we want to be able to do. I was thinking of my slides today. I tend to not stick to them, so I have way more here to show you. But I think as I was listening to the presentations, what kept resonating to me is, how vital this industry is. And I want to offer a little perspective from my end. Since we're the Workforce Board, we work with employers across several different sectors. We have industry partnerships, which I have some slides to talk about that, but I think I might skip them. Because what I want to say is this. The industries some of the industries that we work with, be manufacturing or technology or financial services, construction, many of them talk about attracting talent to Pittsburgh. And you probably heard this too. How can we attract more talent to Pittsburgh, to the region? Well, when I think about that, how can you do that if you don't have a robust travel industry? We talk about diversifying the labor force here in Pittsburgh, lack of diversity. Many times when I talk to, chief officers of diversity, equity, and inclusion, all these different companies that we work with, one of the things they keep telling us is when we talk to diverse talent that lives outside of Pittsburgh, or outside of the region, they ask about, how do I connect to my community? What does your region offer me in terms of food, in terms of entertainment, cultural, events? And this industry is the backbone for that. You are the ones providing that to all the other industries. You will allow the other industries to be able to attract talent to the region, to help themselves. So there cannot be, as just paraphrasing what Adam was saying, there cannot be a full recovery of the region without a full recovery of this industry. So I just really wanted to offer that perspective from our work and say that we want to be that thought partner for you. I mentioned that we had those off-the-shelf services, Careerlink, on-the-job training dollars, those recruitment events, all these, I think, really valuable services. But we also offer industry partnerships, and that's the piece I want to close with. Because depending on where you are, depending on your capacity, I think you should definitely take advantage of those off-the-shelf services. But we would also love to, have a sit-down conversation and understand, your individual needs. Understand, maybe you have, your industry better than we will ever will. So you telling us, these are some of the ideas I'm thinking about that I might want to try out. Thinking outside the box, try something new. And we can have a conversation about how can we make that happen. Are there resources that we may have or know of that you could take advantage of to help pilot something that you have been thinking about, that you think can make a difference in retaining your staff, growing your staff, or whatever you have on your mind? That is who we want to be. So I was going to go through all these slides, tell you about all these industry partnerships and what we do in other industries, but I am going to skip all of that. I think we're close to our break. So, I want to give us a time to stretch, but I want to leave you with that we're working several industries. We're being thought partners to employers across these sectors, and I cannot overstate how much we want to be a partner with you all and help you in any way we can. Again, they are off-the-shelf services, but we want to be that thought partner and help you think through some of the challenges and help you identify some resources that are available to you that can help you. So with that, I'm going to leave you all and hopefully talk to some of you in the room. Thank you very much.
Ladies and gentlemen, at this time, we will pause for a 10-minute break. If you have any follow-up questions for Adam, Jim, or Edgar, we encourage you to raise them directly with them at this time. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Dave Bratton, founder and managing director for Destination Analysts.
So my wife likes to tell me two things about myself. One is that I'm clumsy, and secondly, that I'm completely lacking in common sense. So I'm just going to try something she would never recommend. I've got my little slide deck up here. I'm not checking text messages if you worry about that, but hopefully I won't botch this up. Thank you for having me here today. I'm thrilled to speak after these great speakers we've had. I'm sorry to tell you my story is going to be a little bit bleaker than that. My company does a lot of consumer research. We talk to travelers through surveys and tons of in-depth interviews and focus groups and the like. And I'll try to basically honestly represent to you today how the American traveling public is feeling right now as we move into the new year, because understanding how your customers feel is critical to being a good marketer, right? So what I'm going to do is give you 5 quick things I think you need to know about travelers right now to make good decisions this year. And this is all based on data we collect in a biweekly survey of American travelers. We talk to 1,200 travelers, a nationally representative survey every 2 weeks. And we put together a story for you of these 5 things to know. And the first thing I want you to think about is that traveler safety concerns right now are on the incline. They're growing rapidly. And they also want you to continue your COVID safety, okay? Don't let your grip, don't let go of that, because it's really important right now. Right now, personal health concerns are significant. About 65% of travelers feel that they are worried about catching the virus, and this is on the incline, as you can see in the chart here. I'm going too fast, forgive me guys, let's go back. Come on. There we are. So travel safety, sorry. Okay, let's talk about safety a little more. We track in this survey a variety of different things that people do while they travel, from taking road trips to going out and partying to whatever, and we ask how safe do you think it is right now in general on a 5-point scale from very safe to very unsafe. And you can see the scores here, with the most safe things being taking road trips, the least safe being cruise lines and such. But if we take the average of these, we come up with a 45.5% average of all of them that perceive it as being safe. And you can see here how this has changed over time. We had grown in our ability to feel safe in traveling with all of these different things for a long time. But lately that's changed. You can see that we have more people feeling that they're unsafe doing travel activities than before. I'm actually going to give up on this. Sorry, guys. I'll just yell. You can hear here. So one of the questions that's really important to me in understanding this is our confidence in being able to travel safely. You can see in this chart that we've been in decline in that recently. And this is all driven by the Omicron virus, or strain of the virus. And you can see that the travel safety, I'm so sorry. Please forgive me. I'm having such a hard time with seeing these slides and seeing what I'm talking about. Most travelers right now, 74.8% of them are saying that they're going to be more safe as a result of that. I mean, their activities when they travel are going to be changed. They're going to try to be a little more safe when they get out on the road. Here's one of the problematic things. Right now, 54% of travelers say that they're confident in the ability of the vaccine to keep them safe. This is on the decline, though, and that's something I think we need to keep our eye on as we go forward. If this Omicron virus turns out to, or variant turns out to be less, less dangerous than the earlier ones, it may not be a problem. But depending on what happens, we may see issues with this. In terms of COVID safety, you can see that 73.7% of travelers right now want destinations to continue their COVID safety protocols, and that has been on the incline for the last 2 weeks as well, for obvious reasons, I think. And I just want to tell you a little bit of how that plays out from the story of my travels to Pittsburgh. I was sitting on the plane, and the guy next to me was really nice. He had his mask on, very polite. But across the row from us, there were a couple of dudes who decided to wear their mask down off their noses, and then they got their drinks, right, and they put them down, and they took their mask down. And they sat there for like an hour, and the dude next to me was just furious. He was like talking to me the whole time, like steaming. And Delta Airlines did nothing, they didn't do anything to change this. And I'm left here, do I say something, right? Am I gonna be virally a sensation now when I'm fighting the airplane? Of course I didn't, but what does this make me think as a consumer when I get on my next plane? How much excitement is that gonna generate for me if I know that the industry isn't protecting me, right? It's bad for all of us, and I think we all need to understand that as we do our planning. As in previous waves, this variant is suppressing travel. Right now, about 56% of travelers say that it makes them less interested in travel than before. This is the variant. Now, when we asked them if it's actually affected their travels, you can see that almost 60% say no, about 40% say yes, that it has. The Omicron variant has affected their travels, right? Of those that said no, about 28% said that they expect it will. Maybe they haven't postponed the trip yet, maybe they haven't canceled the trip, but they think that this is going to happen. Now let's look at the other side of that, the 40%. You can see that a big chunk of them have actually postponed the trip or canceled the trip. So approximately 20-some% on both of these things, people of all travelers have reduced their travel either by postponing a trip or by canceling one. So that's not good for us, obviously, in the short term. Third takeaway, despite challenges posed by the Omicron situation, excitement to travel remains high. Adam showed us some of this data, the data from MMGY that showed we're at an all-time record. And you can see looking right now, 72.8% of us. Thank you. Thank you very much. Yay. I'm so sorry, guys. You'll forgive me. 72.8% of us are in what we call a top 5-box score here. That they're concerned about the situation right now. And you can see that this has been going up through the course of the year. Right now we're in a pretty good situation. It's not at a record for the pandemic, but it's pretty good. Now I'll just tell you one thing about this, and I think in terms of consumer psychology, if you take something away from somebody, is there a better way to make them want it? Right? No, there's not. So this is what's going on with people right now. We've been denied something we like, and we've been told we can't do it, so we want it. So I wouldn't expect this to last too long beyond the pandemic, whenever that ends. But our openness to wanting travel information is up too. 2/3 of us right now are in a top 5-box score on this 11-point scale. And they say they are open to learning about new and exciting destinations, and this has been in the upswing as well. Okay, and then the number of trips people expect to take in the next year. Right now, over 86% of travelers say that they're going to be traveling in the next year for leisure. And if you look back a year ago, that was at 74%. So we've made about a 10 percentage point gain there, which is great. The number of trips that people expect to take, though, has not changed much. It's still at about 3 in the next year. So what do we do with that piece of information? One of the things I think you need to know for perspective is that on average, the typical traveler pre-pandemic took about 5 trips a year. So this is well down from what we would expect. And here's the thing. I don't mean to be too negative, but I've been through three recessions as a travel analyst. The first was a dot-com implosion, right? Followed shortly by 9/11. It was a disaster for us, right? Then we had the massive recession that followed, in 2008. And we have this recession, which is really bizarre. And what we see from travelers, it's very schizophrenic. That's the thing. I mean, we may look at the macro numbers and they may look good, but the activity is schizophrenic. And I mean that in that we're not traveling like we used to. Things are very different, right? We all know that. For example, look at San Francisco, my hometown. One of the greatest destinations in the world. If you go into any of the big hotels there, it is a dead zone. I mean, it's embarrassing. It's sad. You go in and maybe one person sitting at the bar. Where 2 years ago it was just lively and fun. But if you go to St. Pete Clearwater, you can't get a room. The beaches are full. Everybody's having a grand old time. Because travelers have changed the way they think about travel to deal with this world we're in. Okay, and we've seen this in our excitement to travel to cities, which obviously is really important to you guys. Pre-pandemic, I always used to say that the city was king in American leisure travel because that's where people wanted to go, it's where they were excited to go, and it's where they took the most trips. That is totally flip-flopped. We're looking at beach destinations, rural destinations, places that you can day trip to. Okay, sorry. Having the hardest time with this, sorry guys. Okay, let's talk about returning to normal. Come on. Am I pointing this the wrong way? I'm sorry. Can't get this to work. Okay. It's going to happen. I know it's going to happen. Okay. We're a long way off from a return to normal. Right now, 33% of travelers give us what we would call a bad rating in terms of how close to normal we are, less than halfway there. And that's been on the decline. We've seen since November, people are feeling a movement away from normalcy. When we ask them about their impact on meaningful travel experiences, and this, Adam, I think is something you guys ought to think about, and we all ought to think about when we decide that we're out of this thing, that we've recovered, what a full recovery means. Right now, 43% of travelers say we're a long way, basically, from being able to have meaningful travel experiences. We may be out on the road, but we're not having fun like we used to. We're not having the relationship experience time we used to. We're not having the experiences that travel typically provides. And this has been fairly flat. It's been up in the last couple weeks. But again, this is the business we're in, right? Aren't we? Providing meaningful experiences. And nearly half of our customers are telling us they can't do it the way they want to. So let's not get too happy right yet. Okay, what do we have here? Likelihood that COVID will be with us for the long term. Yeah, this is, of course, the thing. Everybody knows that this is not going away. We're going to have to deal with it. It's going to be endemic and not a pandemic after a while. So, okay, that's it for the coronavirus. Sorry for the sad story there, but let's talk a little about Pittsburgh. My story here is pretty simple, and I have one thing I like to advise my clients, and that's never underestimate the ignorance of the American traveler. And I just say that jokingly, but people don't know a lot about the world they live in. We just don't. We're concerned about our own lives, what we're doing, all the things we do in our daily life. We're not out thinking about Pittsburgh. Okay, just so you know, a little perspective on this. So let's look at some data we collected to give you a little perspective on where you sit in the marketplace. So we ask about familiarity with the things you have to see and do here. And I collected this from a variety of cities on the East Coast, thinking you could consider that a set of competitive destinations, everywhere from Montreal to New York City to Washington, D.C. And you can see the familiarity with your product is relatively low compared to those other East Coast destinations. When we talk about appeal, though, we ask, well, how appealing is Pittsburgh as a place to visit? You can see it shows up, again, it's number 4 from the bottom here, but a good chunk of people find Pittsburgh a feeling. But here's the interesting thing. When we gave them a question about how unique the experiences you can have here in Pittsburgh are, 45% gave you a high rating in terms of the uniqueness of experiences here, only 27% a lower one. But when we cross-tabbed this out and looked at people that actually were familiar with Pittsburgh, and remember what I said about people just not knowing the world around them, those that have been here in the past 3 years, it's way higher. 70% gave you a high rating in terms of the uniqueness of your product, okay? And then finally, we give it grades. Well, what kind of grade do you give Pittsburgh as a destination for travel? And you can see that it's, it's kind of a bell curve with a little bit of a upward tick toward the top with right now, 20% give you an A, 39% a B, and so on. But again, let's look at that by people who've been here, and it shifts way up. 87% give you a B or higher if they've actually been here, if they've actually experienced what you have to offer. And I'm going to follow the great Adam Sachs here with a story. This is so important that you guys support what the DMO does, because you're looking at a traveling public out there that may not be really well aware of all the great things that you have in this city, and that's what your job is to do, right? That's what you do. That's your wheelhouse, is educating people. So the effort you guys put into helping your DMO to educate the public about the great things that this city has to offer will pay off manifold. It'll pay off in many, many ways the more you can get people to know about you. So, and don't feel that this is very normal. Almost any city in America faces this issue. Unless you're Vegas, New York City, Los Angeles. People just don't know what you have to offer. So anyway, thank you guys for putting up with me and my problems with the technology here. I really appreciate it. I hope you have a great next year. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Paul Hoback, Chief Development Officer for the Allegheny County Airport Authority.
Good morning. On behalf of myself, of course, and the airports that we serve at Pittsburgh International and the Allegheny County Airport in West Mifflin, I just want to thank you so much for the opportunity to speak to all of you this morning. Jared, to you and your team, an incredible job setting this up. Thank you so much for all that you do for the region that we all serve. And I have to also give a shout out, just as Adam did earlier, to everybody in this room, frankly. The fact that we're all still here fighting through this says so much about our industry, and that gives me great hope and optimism for our future. So you truly are all heroes of this epic saga, as Adam mentioned. I find inspiration in today's venue this morning and what the Aviary does for conservation and really for the celebration of birds and wildlife. One of the founding innovators of the aviation industry, Wilbur Wright, once said, "The desire to fly is an idea handed down to us by our ancestors who looked enviously on the birds soaring freely on the infinite highway of the air." Birds soaring freely on the infinite highway of the air. Since the dawn of human existence, we've been trying to take flight. And in the last 120 years, since that first powered flight in North Carolina, we've realized that our sky is not even a limit anymore. And yet, in my career, spanning 22 years in the aviation industry, I have personally witnessed two events that nearly silenced air transportation and shook the travel industry to its core. The first was 9/11, which was 9 months after I got into this business. And the second, of course, is this worldwide pandemic that we're all in now. From an airport perspective, 9/11 was actually, for the amount of traffic that we had at the airport, was a blip on the radar compared to what we're experiencing today. For months at a time, back when this pandemic began, we were down nearly 95%. You know, there were moments in time where I was walking through the airport, trying to find a passenger, and it was shocking to see that. And a full recovery is really going to take years. But after fighting through these difficulties, there is great hope that people are now traveling again. And we've heard that tone of cautious optimism here from everyone already this morning. So, you know, I wanted to start this presentation real quickly by talking to you about some of the metrics that we're experiencing right now at the airport. There's not much I have to say about this. It's already been said. You know, I think Adam talked about it, Jim talked about it. These are monthly seats throughout the pandemic. They've been down significantly. If I would have shared with you a passenger chart and a passenger graph, it would be much worse than this. So our marketing department, of course, picks the better one out here. But so we did have steep loss, but we are starting to recover. As Jim mentioned earlier, we're well over 80% recovery in the months of November and December. So there's a lot of hope in the air at the airport, especially from a traveler perspective. Leisure traffic is booming right now. Everybody wants to fly somewhere fun and warm, like was mentioned earlier. But business traveler is also recovering. What we saw in the fourth quarter is a lot of those legacy airlines like American Airlines, United, Delta, they were starting to see big increases in traffic to those business destinations. So we're cautiously optimistic, and I say caution because, you know, we're still experiencing this Omicron variant. So looking at some of the markets that we serve, you know, the leisure markets are booming. Look at all those lines that you have going to airports in Florida, and that's why all those airports are well above, you know, what they had from a pre-pandemic perspective. Some of those business nonstops are certainly returning. The Northeast is starting to see more and more flights each day to places like New York, Chicago, those kind of things. You know, Alaska Airlines just recently added a second flight to Seattle, and that reflects our strong technology economy. 7 years ago, I think when Christina Casotas first became our CEO, I think we had 37 nonstop destinations at that time. So the fact that we have 59, you know, in the middle of a pandemic is much better, but there's still a lot of work to do. You know, of course, we don't have a flight directly to San Francisco right now, and our teams are working hard to make sure that we do that. But there's still a lot of hope in the air. You know, late last year, we announced the return of British Airways service to London Heathrow this coming summer. That's something that we're really excited about and we think is a very positive sign for 2022. They have chosen to return this summer because they believe in us. They believe in this region, and they're making a bet on Pittsburgh, and that's why they're returning. I can tell you, and if there's anything that I can ask of all of you coming out of this presentation today, it's, you know, that flight will only be successful if we put people in those seats. So those seats are coming, but we have to make sure people are flying British Airways. So anything that you can do to help impact that and help make that a reality by filling butts with seats, as we call it in the aviation industry, that's something that's very important, and I appreciate all of your help. But there's good signs in the air. Cargo's booming. You know, we're up well over 30% from pre-pandemic levels. Everybody's shopping online. The e-commerce areas are really picking up. We are in the ideal geographic location in the Northeast, United States, right between the Northeast and the Midwest, so around all of those big population centers. So we have incredible partners in Qatar, as well as Cathay Pacific. And Amazon Air just started service here the past year, and they've doubled their flights already. So there's a lot of sense of hope from that perspective. So let's start talking about another big project that's happening in this region. As we've saw a lot of hope in our business metrics that you see, and we're picking up in all of those areas, it's the strategic priorities that we've been able to continue throughout this pandemic. One of those is advancing our terminal modernization program forward. You know, Pittsburgh International Airport is the front door to the region to almost 10 million passengers a year in those pre-pandemic levels. When we embarked on this major transformation project of our facilities, it was about 8 years ago when we started to talk about this. We started the process with some planning, concept designs, and those kind of things. We created several goals at that time, including right size and modernizing our airport. We were built to be that major hub of U.S. Airways, but in 2005 they decided to dehub, so we lost all of those connecting passengers. So our airport is very different today than it was being used at when it was built in 1992. So right sizing and modernizing led to our number one goal, and that was to keep the cost to the airlines stable and predictable. They were the ones that are going to back the debt associated with this project. They bet on Pittsburgh, that they know that this project is going to reduce our O&M expenses. It's going to shrink the footprint of the terminal, and it's going to keep those airline costs stable and predictable. We also wanted to take the advantage of this chance to really showcase the best of the region and the regional assets by showcasing them right here at Pittsburgh International Airport, which is the front door to the region. So our terminal modernization program is split into two parts. The first is our terminal, and you can see from the rendering that the landside terminal is going to be eliminated, and we're going to build a new structure that's connected to airside right in the center of that airside X that you can see on the screen there. That would include, baggage claim, ticketing, security checkpoint. All of those functions will be in this new facility. We're also building a multimodal complex. That's a new parking garage with 3,300 spaces, almost entirely undercover. We currently have less than 1,000 spaces that are undercover. And look at it out there. I mean, we're in the northeast snow belt of the United States. We get a ton of rain, so it's not the best situation currently for our passengers. So we're making sure that we're addressing that with this new terminal. And of course, all those close-in parking areas and everything else, the rental car spaces associated with that, that multimodal complex. As part of this, we talked about early on in the project that we wanted to improve the passenger experience from curb to gate. And even beyond that. So when you come on our property and you hit the Eagles, you're on the airport, and we wanted to make sure that you had a better experience in almost every way possible from the moment you came on the property until the time that you boarded an aircraft, or vice versa if you're on your way back. To do that, we were certainly, shrinking our footprint, making it easier to find your way, but also establishing that sense of place, that sense of Pittsburgh, so that when you get on a plane or off a plane, you're in Pittsburgh, so that we have an airport that reflects our amazing city. Early on in the design process, we identified a few specific characteristics that we thought defined Pittsburgh, and those are nature, technology, and community, a sense of community, and the friendliness that we have here in the Pittsburgh region. So we wanted to make sure that those elements were visible in every aspect of the design. We also wanted to make this a project that is built for Pittsburgh and by Pittsburgh. So we wanted to use local products, local materials, and utilize as many local companies as possible. Just one example, we currently have structural steel being manufactured across the United States and being shipped to Ambridge, Pennsylvania, which is, I think, a 10-minute drive from the airport, and Sipple Steel is going to be fabricating all the steel for the new Pittsburgh International Airport, which is, we have a long history of manufacturing and making things in Pittsburgh, and that's still in our DNA. So it's so important for this airport to be built for Pittsburgh and by Pittsburgh. From a public health perspective, as Dave mentioned earlier, consumer personal health is top of mind. We were actually going to start building this new airport 2 years ago, and then COVID hit, and then the airlines started to panic, and then they said, "Whoa, let's stop. Let's not move move forward at that time." Well, right then, we used the next several months to actually bring together some of the world's experts in public health, and to make sure that we were including all of those elements from a public health perspective in our design. And we wanted to rethink some of the decisions that we made along the way. Of course, value engineering ended up taking several of our outdoor terraces out of the design. And in a post-pandemic world where everybody wants access to those outdoors, we decided we have to get those back in. So now with this new design, we're going to have 4 outdoor terraces. 2 of them are going to be accessible after you get through security. There are only a few airports in the world that actually have that in place today. So we're really excited about that. Utilizing technologies to make sure that the passengers have that touchless and seamless passenger journey if they want that. If they want to go talk to someone, have those close-up interactions, well, those will also be available too. But we wanted to make sure we utilize technologies to truly make this one of the smartest airports in the world when we open. We have been positioning this project as a project of choice for the entire region. We want to attract the best and the brightest from a construction and trade workers perspective to make sure that this building, this new facility is built with high quality, on time, and on budget. So we've been focusing some of that element on making sure that they understand the importance of this project for the region, making sure that they understand that it's a legacy project, making safety our #1 priority. We actually have a partnership with OSHA that is like no other. It's directly with the owner, and we're inviting them onto the site. Rather than OSHA being a reactive force, that responds when there's injuries. No, we're inviting them on at all times. We want them to be a part of this to make sure that we mitigate any hazards. We also have on-site mobile medical services, an EMT on-site all the time, plus our fire department, which is phenomenal and an incredible resource that you don't typically have on construction sites. And also, you know, I live in Beaver, so I watch the Shell Cracker Plant, project proceeding each and every day. And I talked to a lot of the people in my neighborhood about, working on that site. They didn't have on-site parking, so they're parking all over the place and they're being bussed on-site. So we heard that. We heard how important that is to construction workers to be able to be parking on-site. So we've now made room for all construction workers, all 5,500 of them, to be on-site during the next 3 years. But we're also doing some very innovative things along the way. We are currently in the process of finalizing the design, and we'll build a new child care facility on site for this construction project. We're finishing up partnerships to have transportation so that we can open up access to opportunities. There are far too many people in aviation and in construction that look a lot like me, frankly. And we want to make sure that we change that narrative in Pittsburgh. So we're doing things like expanding those opportunities, like breaking down barriers for small and disadvantaged businesses and for people who look different than most people who are out on a construction site. We're also doing some things, outside the terminal modernization, but all have an impact on the terminal modernization and the overall development we have on the airport. Things like, building Neighborhood 91 and opening Neighborhood 91 during the pandemic, which is a 195-acre business park focused around the production ecosystem of the additive manufacturing industry. But also, building and opening our microgrid. So we have 5 natural gas generators that we built over the last few years, as well as 9,000 solar panels that are on a hillside that's a former landfill, so it couldn't be used for anything else. We have 9,000 of those solar panels creating all the energy for the entire airport campus. So we generate all the airport energy that's needed. The electrical grid, that's actually our backup power now. So we are the most resilient, site-hardened airport in the entire world, and we're quite proud of that, and that is part of our overall plan for development on that site. The impact to the region that this project, this terminal modernization project, will have may be coming at maybe the best time, when our local economy needs that stimulus. It's the right time. We're hopefully nearing the end of a pandemic, although we're going to be dealing with this probably for the rest of our lives. But this project alone will create those 14,300 jobs, direct and indirect jobs, generate $2.5 billion in economic activity, and do it all with no local taxpayer money used. There's not a dime of local taxpayer money used to run the airport. It's all on user fees, and there's none that's going to be part of this construction. It's all going to be covered by the airlines from their debt perspective. So we're quite proud of that. Where we are from a schedule perspective, the project began, as I mentioned earlier, 8 years ago. We began construction last spring with several enabling projects. And what I mean by enabling projects, they were really just getting the construction site ready. And those have been happening for the past year. We wanted to make sure that this project didn't impact airport operations. You see other airports like LaGuardia. I mean, it's literally like they're changing the tires on a speeding car. And we wanted to completely separate this from airport operations, and it's entirely greenfield site that's ready for construction now, and it's under construction today. We're building the foundations. We'll start erecting steel in 2 months, so you'll start to see it come out of the ground in the coming years. There's about 9 cranes on site right now. We're looking at getting approval to use another 300-foot crane, which is going to start erecting steel, so it's getting exciting very fast. We look forward to completing this project in late 2024. It's going to take probably 6 months to commission and test and then start to move folks over into utilizing this, but we hope to open this in early 2025. So with that being said, and with that timeline in mind, I want to briefly transport all of you to 2025 and give you a peek into the future of travel at Pittsburgh International.
Today, our city moves closer to what it will be next. The more than 3.5 million people who call the Pittsburgh region home move closer. Closer to adventures and opportunities, to family and friends, to the achievements and accomplishments that will define their lives. Today, everything moves closer. On the map, the distance is less than half a mile, but the true impact of moving the terminal building is unmeasurable. 14,000 jobs today, an extraordinary economic impact for tomorrow. A commitment to deepening partnerships with airlines around the world. A strong step closer to a sustainable transportation future that's focused on you. Embracing natural beauty, making the outdoors part of every journey, and with more covered parking and simplified baggage management. This is more than a building. Through it, our 8,800-acre airport becomes the new front door to our region's economic and cultural future. The starting point for more nonstop flights to more destinations. Powering commerce and innovation in robotics, energy, advanced manufacturing, healthcare, and education. Pittsburgh, a city famous for its bridges, will now have one more magnificent structure that connects the city to the world, that crosses over from what is to what could be, and that connects each and every one of us to the future of travel.
To quickly close this presentation out, I just want to say this new terminal will represent more than just an airport. It will represent the best that frankly our region has to offer. It will welcome people from all over the world and will build this region's brand nationally and internationally. Our city was really punched in the gut when we lost the steel industry, and that was mentioned earlier today. We fought back, we diversified, and we are stronger than ever today because of that. Our airport was frankly hit in the face when U.S. Airways chose to dehub Pittsburgh, and it took a long while for us to fight our way back. But again, the tenacity, the resilience of the people of our region, as well as a new leader at the airport with a vision of what the airport could become, we've been able to accomplish quite a bit and are currently building a new airport, which I don't think any of us ever realized that we could actually achieve. And finally, our industry, the travel industry, was blindsided by this pandemic, and frankly, the length of time of the overall impact that we continue to feel, after 2 years of dealing with all this. But I'm here to say, and to kind of wrap up the sentiments that you heard this morning, that there's optimism in travel in 2022, and that optimism is real. People are traveling again, and I can tell you just from the airport's perspective, the birds of aviation with their jet engines singing over the morning horizon continue to increase, and this is frankly a sign of great hope and something that we should all be proud of and should smile about as we leave today. So the future of travel is here, and we're ready to showcase Pittsburgh to the world, and I just really want to wrap up and say, thanks again, Jared, for this opportunity. Thanks for all that you and your team do for the industry that we all serve, and just everyone have a safe, healthy, and an awesome day. So thank you very much.
I've seen Paul give that story. You could probably give that speech or that presentation in your sleep by now. But I've seen Paul give that presentation a few times, and I have to say it's always infectious from a positive standpoint. There's a lot of really exciting things going on at the Airport Authority, Christina, Paul, Brian, the entire team are doing just a phenomenal job, and we're proud to have them as a partner. Also proud to have a partner at Allegheny County, or Allegheny Community Development Organization. The conference, as we all warmly know it, is another amazing partner in our economic development efforts. We could not be more thrilled to have them as a partner, and we certainly are looking for greater days ahead. Workforce development front, we're certainly excited to see the blooming partnership we're creating with Partner for Work. Edgar and the entire team are doing a phenomenal job of reaching across industries. There's a lot that we've talked about for hospitality in particular. We know that there's not an overnight Band-Aid that we can put on the labor shortage that we have across the sector, but we do know that there's a lot that we can do to build workforce development, a sustainable workforce development as we move into the future. Dave, Adam, thank you so much for being with us. You know, we're honored to have partners like these two from across the industry, across the country, and there's many more that we all work together to move this industry forward. And we could not be more thrilled with the data and the information that both of your organizations provide. There's a lot that we're going to be doing over this next year to roll out a platform called Symphony. Symphony is a platform that's created by Tourism Economics. Andrea and Kinsey and the rest of our team have been laboring for months and months to get this up and running. We're super excited about being able to put out more concrete data for ourselves and for all of you that certainly help us make decisions as we move forward. So thank you again to all of our speakers today, but most importantly, thank you to all of you. We certainly could not imagine a path forward without the strong partnerships we have with everybody in this room and for all of those partners that are not with us today. We are certainly excited about what 2022 has to offer. I think the optimism is certainly abundant in all of the presentations we've had. We carry that optimism forward, and the only reason we carry that forward is because we get that optimism from you. As we move around the marketplace and have conversations with all of you to understand what's going on in your businesses, we understand that all of you are quite confident in where this path is taking us. So we're proud and honored to do this together. We thank you so much for daring the elements and the pandemic and so forth to come together today. We love being in the same space with our colleagues, and we hope that you've enjoyed it as well. So thank you again very much. Thanks for coming out, and we look forward to a great year ahead. Thank you.